to a heart cradle. So I will introduce Kay. I was saying to Abigail and Andrea that I've spent 20 years now in TV and radio, and I'm never nervous going into a TV studio or a 4-hour radio programme. And the minute I come into a room with eyes, I start to panic. And no one quite gets it, because I think we have quite good figures for North West Ireland. We're the biggest regional news programme. So we're up there in the millions of people that watch. And on radio as well, I do a lot of radio shows. But you are one earpiece in your ear and one microphone, and maybe I've got Roger sitting next to me. And other than that, we've even gone down from having loads of floor staff to barely anyone these days. So seeing people puts the fear of God in me. I also, much to my mother's disgrace, and I do apologise, but I have got a potty mouth, and I think it's because I'm on TV and radio. So when I'm in work, we have a big red light that says on air, and I flip from being Kay from Stockport to being Kay in BBC, so I just don't swear. Otherwise I'm like, oh, bollocks, and then Roger sat next to me and we're talking utter garbage to each other. So apologies if I do offend at all during this chat. And I am going to talk about Cradle, which is a charity that I'm a trustee for, but I'll come to that in a couple of minutes. So I work in TV and radio, and I never wanted to be a presenter. I wanted to be an actress, and so of course I actually grew up in Bramhall, the wrong side of the village, so we're Davenport, Hazel Grove side. And I went to Players Dramatic Society in Sheelagh and decided I was going to be a star. And then, at the age of 18, after a boyfriend dumped me, 2 days before we were flying to Australia, I quickly filled out all my application forms and just went. And then, well, there was no phone back then, was there? So I must have rung my mum to say, oh, by the way, you'll be getting some forms. And of course, I'd applied to all the drama courses. So Mum, God love her, spent a good chunk of that year going up and down the country, my mum hates being in front of anybody. She doesn't want to be on stage. She was going on stage. One of the universities made her do some role play, and she absolutely hated me. And I had visions of being at Rose Bruford down in London, which turned out was about 30 grand a year. So Mum put a stop to that, and then sent me to Edinburgh because she decided that I wasn't allowed to just do acting. I had to do a split degree, so I had to actually use my brain. So off I went to Edinburgh, and I did do English and acting, and I got into really dodgy radio. I couldn't even tell you who it was for, but I know I was in an attic of some radio station that probably shouldn't have been on air, but it was amazing. I loved it, and I got into hospital radio and offended a lot of people that were sick, and probably again shouldn't have been on radio there. But that was where I found that I loved just talking nonsense, and while it is my job, everyone will say about me that I'm one of the nosiest people you'll ever meet, and it's not. I'm just very interested in the real you, which is why I do prefer radio over TV. TV is brilliant there's nothing better than live broadcast on TV, but when you get a 4-hour radio show, you do get a chance to actually chat to people, which is my passion. I love that the most. Anyway, I came back from uni and I got on to Manchester, Met to do my masters to be a drama teacher. And Mother was delighted. And I'd also sent out 200 CVs to independent production companies, begging to do anything in TV. And I got a letter back to say, meet us at this random site in North Wales at 6 a.m. for 3 weeks. You're a runner. And I've been told that runners were like basically wiping people's arses. You're just doing whatever you can do and you won't be getting paid for it. So I was like, oh. So I set my alarm, and Mum was like, oh, don't think you need to be up at 4 to get to Didsbury. And I was like, fuming. I did not go and do my masters. I did not become a drama teacher. I went to Wales and rolled up on this set, and this guy came up to me and said, "Yep, you'll do. She's just fired her PA." And I was like, "What?" And it was Kay Crewdson, who back 22 years ago, she'd just won The Jungle. She was with Brian McFadden. Everybody loved her. And she was a Rottweiler and I had fired her PA. And I turned up and they said, "You'll do." So sadly and gratefully I took it, and I did get paid for it. It was 3 weeks, which turned into 2 years, because they never factored in that we were doing Iceland adverts, that you do close-ups on a lot of the food. I don't know why they didn't think of that. But they do filming for 2 full weeks of her and then 2 weeks of hand shots. But because she was in such demand, she was going off to film something else. So then the director went around all the cast, looking at everybody's hands, cast and crew, and lo and behold, I became Kay Crewdson's hand model for 2 years. So back to mum being slightly annoyed at having spent 4 years at university. I'm now a hand model for someone that was not great in the press. I loved it. It was brilliant. I did an advert. What did I do? Jif. I did an advert where I wiped up cat and dog prints. And I genuinely believed I was on the making, so I did an advert that I was quite naive and I'd sign anything, and they said, "Sign this and we'll give you a payout." And I think it was 200 quid. I was like, "Oh, this is incredible." So I signed it and they said, "It'll just be on for 4 weeks." And it was a car craft advert, which I should have found for you. You might remember it. I'm the main person on the advert, which stayed on for 2 years, where I sing "It's so quick at car craft." And I sing this song and I sell cars. And it was on in Spain, where my friends lived. And had I not signed a payout, I probably would have made a small fortune. They replaced me with the cartoon hippopotamus, which was quite unfortunate 2 years later. And from that, I did Life on Mars, and I truly believed I was about to be the best actress known to man. I got a Winnebago with my name on the door. I had my own makeup artist, and I was... So you're either you're an actor or an actress, and then you are the stages of walk-ons and side roles. And I was like the one just beneath being the actress, and I was dressed in a toga, and we were at this dinner party. And basically, we spent 2 weeks filming, and I mean, when it came on, I've got everyone there watching it, and to say I was on for less than a minute would probably be an understatement. All that happened was the main guy pinched me on the arse, and it was basically a swingers party, and I was the sexy girl, half-dressed, that got my arse felt. And everyone was like, "Oh, it's not quite what we thought that would be." So close to being so famous. So I didn't quite make it in the acting world. I did do quite a lot of adverts and quite a lot of programmes that didn't go anywhere, but nothing quite got off the mark. But I did meet on one of these adverts an Irish guy who's very eccentric, and he ended up letting me run his crew and equipment company, which was at the Pie Factory, which is now, it has been squashed, but that was the original base at Media City, where we walked into the old Pie Factory, and all the gone-off meat was there, and there was like 20 grand it took to get rid of all this meat. So I ran a crew and equipment company from there, which was great because I was meeting all the different crew. But I also got a job at Channel M. I don't know if you remember Channel M. And interestingly, I became their weather presenter, which back in the day would be like, "Shit, we're on air. Right, there's the MEN. Says it's going to be cloudy and wet. Looks dry, just make it up." So that's what we used to do at Channel M. But it was great, it was a really good learning ground. So I used to do that and the entertainment, but you'd have to be at the studio at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'd be up at 3, I'd leave the breakfast show there at 9, I'd go over to Media City, well, what was not Media City, the Pie Factory, to run the studio. And then 3 nights a week, for free, I used to do radio shows on Pure Radio in Stockport. And I was basically skint. So I thought, what can I do that's going to like, basically get me stuff. So I came up with Kay's Aid instead of Stockport, where I'd go around different holistic therapies and beauty treatments, and like A for acupuncture, and I went through the list. And for some god-known reason, I did C for colonic, and I did a colonic live on air. Anyway, I was amazed by this colonic, because the woman said it was the only way that you could find out if you had colon cancer. So I promptly rang my mum and said, I'm retraining, because this lady's got no one, and she's prepared to invest in me. So genuinely was close to completely getting away from everything. Mum had to have another word, and she kiboshed that. So there was, I could have helped you out in more ways than one, but no, I didn't go any further with the colonic hydrotherapy. But I did get to the point where I was working 3 days a week, 18-hour days, and I was knackered, and I thought, this can't go on. So after about 2 years, I applied for 2 things. One was to become a production manager for Lionized Production Company, and they did all the Peter Kay, everything that Peter Kay did, it would be with him. But I'd met Peter Kay at the Pie Factory, and he's a, don't put this on the internet, he's a bit of a knob. So not funny, and he's really rude, so it really annoyed me, but it was a really good job. But he was just a very angry man who didn't like basically little people in his way, so I thought, ooh, I'm going to be quiet, I'll be little and working my way up. But it was a good job, so I thought, no, do it. And I also applied to become, to get onto the BBC College of Journalism news traineeship, and they took 15 people on and sent you either to a region or a nation for a year, and then gave you a job for a year. And I applied for that, which was hilarious because my news knowledge is slim to none. Entertainment knowledge, back then I could tell you anything about Coronation Street. It was amazing. So for some reason I got an interview. They took 5,000 applicants, they interviewed 100 over 5 hours, and I took Mother with me down to London, and we went out the night before for a calming wine. Speaking of which, have a sip. So we went for a calming wine. I don't know why, but I also had really bad IBS at the time. By the way, I do give too much information. So we got on the tube in the morning. I felt a tad rough. Probably not prepared for a 5-hour interview. And I started sweating, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go, Mum. And she was like, you can't, no. So we had to get off the tube. There was problems, IBS, it's either all or nothing, and it was all. So I run into the building late, and there's this huge, there was 100 people, so there was a lot of people, and I sat down, and I sat next to this woman, and she was like, you all right? And I was like, I think I've messed up. I told her. I was like, not only has all that happened, I've got sweat patches, and I know fuck all about anything. And she was like, okay. She went, well, it's lovely to meet you. She went, we better get started. I went, oh yeah, we are. And then she stood up and said, hi, I'm Claire Prosser, I'm the director. So, didn't think that would go anywhere, but I got a phone call off her, basically laughing 2 days later, saying my news knowledge was the worst she'd ever seen. My entertainment knowledge was incredible. And that the College of Journalism was a very serious, it was a bit like doing your masters, and they took it very seriously, and they trained you to within an inch of your life. But there was always room for one person who could just talk themselves out of a situation, and for that reason, I'd got it, and she was sending me to Northern Ireland because I was the only person that could probably cope with the amount of trouble that was still happening in Northern Ireland. So then that was it. I went off to Northern Ireland and trained to be an online journalist, a radio journalist, and a TV journalist. And schools were back then, still are, not the place for someone from Stockport gobbing off as a trainee journalist, but there I was. Belfast, by the way, is incredible if you've never been. I was always trying to impress people, and I don't know why, but things always do happen to me. So I saw or heard about Anthony Gormley's Fourth Plinth project. I don't know if you remember that. He did it in Trafalgar Square, and you could apply to get a place on the plinth. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to apply. I'm going to get a place on that plinth, and I'm going to do a radio show from it. Of course, I got on. Like, hundreds of thousands of people applied. I got a place to go and do this. And work suddenly started to notice who I was, and I was like, oh, look at me. I will do a bit of a radio show, but why don't I do a one-act play? So they had me on Good Morning Ulster, asking the audience to recommend or to write a play for me, of which some lovely guy did, but it was from the Huntington's disease charity. And he ended up being a one-woman show about Huntington's. I was a gene, I think, or I honestly can't remember. It was the most embarrassing hour of my entire life, with Mother stood at the bottom watching, going, what are you doing? Anyway, apparently I'm in history somewhere, because what I did is all with Anthony Gormley. So, but it made me think, you know what, if you put yourself out there and you tell the universe, then you will get back what you want. I still didn't really know what I wanted, but I was going out with a guy, 10 years went out with him, the boy next door, and I moved back to Stockport to be with him from Belfast. And I came home to start School Report. So School Report, we train 11 to 16-year-olds on how to become news journalists. And the task in hand was to take on a 7-month project which would end in the March School Report Day by opening up Media City with 100 children who had no idea what they were doing in a building that wasn't fit for purpose. I was like, absolutely! So I did. There was 3 of us in the office. It was single-handedly the hardest job I've ever done. I ended up getting swine flu on Christmas Eve because I was doing snow angels at the works do in the car park, and I got a cold and it turned into swine. You remember when swine flu was a thing? Got swine flu. But did the 7 months. It was incredible. I cried on News Report Day, and we opened up Media City, and I felt like I'd come full circle from being at the Pie Factory to Media City. And then I got booted down to Newsround to keep Newsround on air. I missed the part where the boyfriend was cheating on me. We got rid of him. He went. I moved to London. My mate at the time was playing for Man City, Richard Dunn. And he'd left City, he was at Aston Villa. And he rang me and said, I've got the guy. I was like, oh God, I don't want to be set with anybody. No, he's really funny, you'll love him. I did. He's not the one, but it's vital in this part of the story because I go to work for Newsround, and as I walk into Newsround, they push me in the other direction towards sport. And I was like, why is my chair of football? And they said, well, you're going to produce Match of the Day Kickabout. I was like, oh, no, I shan't be doing that. And they went, oh, no, you are, because the person who's got the job, they can't do it. And your CV said that you worked for Northern Ireland Sport. I only worked in Northern Ireland Sport for 6 weeks because the bloke that ran Northern Ireland Sport was really fit. And I thought, what a way to learn to go and be out with them. So, okay, couldn't lie. And so I was like, oh yeah, no, I did, I loved it as well. Yeah, I'll do that job. So I took Dunny up on the offer of meeting this other guy because he was the fitness coach for Aston Villa, and I thought if I go out with him, I can do that job because he'll tell me everything about football because I knew nothing about football. So that's how I got through that job. Anyway, he helped for that reason and nothing else. Well, and we were to keep Newsround on air so that they could move to Salford. So that was my job for that. And as it came to an end, the lady that I worked for rang me and said, you like the weather, don't you? And I was like, ooh, I don't know where to go with this. Yeah. She went, you do if you get free makeup. And I was like, oh, interesting. What kind of free makeup? She's like, oh, it's not Superdrug. And I was like, right, I'm in. What she didn't tell me was that I needed to know what I was talking about, that I'd have to get up at 2:50 a.m. every day, and I'd have to go back to uni and study meteorology. So I took the job. It was a 6-month basis, and I took it and thought, I just assumed, even though I had been a news producer, news and weather are very separate. News is very involved. Everyone knows what's happening, what's going on at all points. Weather, you self-produce, you self-edit, you self-present, you're on your own. You just happen to be part of a programme. So I never really paid too much attention to the weather presenters until I started. And I started in Leeds, and I did a 6-month job, which was brilliant because at that time, everyone had their own regional breakfast, lunch and tea time presenters. But it was in the year that we were getting rid of loads of jobs and amalgamating them all. So I did 6 months that was a breeze, and I learnt on the job. I then went back and did meteorology at Open University, so throughout those 6 months and another year after. And then I took over covering the north of England from Leeds. So we did Yorkshire, East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire, the North East and Cumbria. 3 TV patches, 8 radio stations. From 4 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you were talking weather clock. You do 58 broadcasts. There's barely time to wee, and you need to know what you're talking about. And the Cumbrian fells are quite different to the Lincolnshire plains, so it was a fast learning curve. And I probably did it for about a year till I started getting bored again, and that's when I started to get back into radio. And I ended up being offered a job at Radio York, doing a Finders Keepers show, which is like it was me in the studio, a guy in a car, treasure hunt, the audience had to find, guess, answer the clues and send us to the next place. So I used to do that every Saturday morning, alongside working for every other radio show, doing anything that they'd give me. But I couldn't get any further where I was, because regionally, there's only one job if you want to work in the BBC. And even if you want to work in ITV, there's only really one job. And other than that, you are breakfast, and that means getting up at the crack of dawn, or your weekend. So I moved down to the East Midlands, where I got a job being the main presenter 3 days a week, and on my last day, I would either report, cover a radio show. I had the best job, it was amazing. And during that time, my best mate mum got throat cancer, and she wanted to do something for her. So we decided to climb Mount Kinabalu in Borneo. But you couldn't just, oh yeah, let's go and do it. You had to raise 10 grand. So we spent a year doing car boot sales, disco, anything we could do, whilst doing this job in the Midlands, and I loved it. And we trekked through a jungle. I got a leech in my knickers, beyond the realm of pain, climbed a mountain, found myself, came home, and my old boss from Radio York rang me the day I landed to offer me a breakfast show, which doesn't happen in BBC. You don't get offered anymore. And I just said, no, how dare you offer me a breakfast show? I found myself. And he was like, Jesus Christ. He was like, all you've ever wanted is your own breakfast show. And I was like, mm-hmm. He was like, I'm going to give you a week. So I lasted a week. And then I moved back to York, which would be great. But again, you're going back to 3 o'clock in the morning, wake up, so you need to read through all the papers, you've got to know what you're talking about. And I move into a city where I need people, but no one else finishes work at 10 o'clock in the morning. And you're jet lagged for the rest of the day. But fine, I'll do it. And that was in the beginning of December. I was starting in January. I came home for Christmas, and I remember saying to my sister, I am done with men. I was always the one, I've been a bridesmaid 9 times. Horrendous. So I was like, I'm done with it. I'm going to move to York. I'm just going to be an amazing radio presenter, and then I'm just going to take over the world. And we walked into the bar where she was meeting the guy that she was seeing, and he said, make sure you stay, because my best mate's over from New York. And that was Jim, who's now my Jim. So I met him on Christmas Eve, and on the weekend, the first weekend in January, when I was supposed to go to York to find somewhere to live, I went to New York, because he was from Disley, but he lived in New York. So we had this ridiculous whirlwind romance, and I told my boss on day one that I'd met the one. And he went, what part of York is he from? And I was like, oh yeah, the new part. And he was like, oh, where's that? I was like, the big bit, the apple. And he was like, oh God. So we all knew I was only going to do a year. During that time, I won't go into too many details, but I'd only, 5 months in, we were pregnant. We'd only actually spent about 3 weeks together, which brings me on to Cradle in a minute. We didn't keep that baby, that was Reg, but that is the reason that Cradle is in my life. So I'll wrap work up, I quit everything after a year, and no one, I lost a friend over it, because some people found it really hard to understand why the career-obsessed TV presenter, radio presenter just jacked it all in. And I just decided, I'd given everything to the BBC, and as a result, I've got insomnia because of the shift pattern. And I just thought, enough now. It's always in me, I'll come back to it. So after a year, I did emigrate, pregnant again. And I remember sitting, skip a few years, I sat with Ava, who's my eldest now. She must have been about 9 months old. We were back in America, and I'd come home, I'd said bye to everyone because we were getting married over there in order for my paperwork to come through, which meant I couldn't leave the country for 18 months. And I got a phone call from a friend to say that Diane had passed away. And obviously I was sad about Diane. I knew her, I'd worked with her, but I wasn't a close friend of her, but I was obviously sad, and I knew a lot of people who knew her. And I said to my mate in America, ugh, the dream job. It's like, I'm from Stockport. If you're going to work in weather, in my opinion, I would, and I've always wanted to work for the BBC, even though the pay is utterly abysmal. But still, I have pride for working for the BBC, and it's the dream job. And she said, well, you never say never. I was like, we've just got back. I've said bye to everyone. My mum is sending my boxes over. And 2 days later, Jim, who'd lived out in America for 15 years, got offered a job in London. Can you imagine my mother's face when I told her the boxes that she'd shipped? She had to do a reboot. So we moved to London. Now, Ava was 1. I moved to London. I promptly rang North West Tonight and said, look, I know you're going to be in a sticky situation. It's not comfortable for anyone, but I know you're going to be stuck. They were desperate. Now, I used to live in a house, a weather house in Leeds, with a girl called Keely Donovan, who's the main presenter for Look North. And I trained Owain, or what he was known as Owen when he first started out. So me, Owain and Keely all used to live together, and it was just like a drunk weather house. We had some great parties. Anyway, he rang me, and I thought, oh, hello. And I went, mate, you're not very Stockport though, are you? And he said, no, but I'm a lot different than Diane was. And I was like, well, to be fair, you are. Now, we were living in London. It wasn't ever a possibility that I was going to live in Manchester, separate us all. So I spoke to the boss, and it was me and Owain, basically, who went for the job together. But I'd already said, I just need to have my foot in the door. I've got a 1-year-old, I'm sleep deprived. We live in London, it's never going to work. But they couldn't give me the job because I have a lot of similarities to Diane in career and general personality. So they gave it to Owain, who's like Marmite, and he'll say it himself, love or hate. Which worked great for me because I could do all this cover, and that's what I did until COVID hit and ruined my life and everyone else's. And during that time, because Jim's job was always overseas, as long as he was near an airport or a train station, whenever COVID stopped, or the lockdown stopped, it didn't matter where we were. So we're like, well, let's just move back up north. He's from Disley, we're from the wrong side of Bramwell. And my cousin lived in Marple on Bowden Lane. So we started looking for a house. I think Rightmove was shut, and it opened, and we came up that week. And my cousin Rich was like an assassin because he was desperate to get us in Marple. My dad who now, by the way, wants to move to Marple, was aghast. He was like, what? Nobody from Bramwell moves to Marple. I was like, what? And he went, no, don't bank. You'll never get me in Marple. Mum said to me today, Dad wants to move to Marple. I'm like, fine. So we found a house, and my cousin, the stalker, went and basically attacked the woman and said she wasn't allowed to sell the house. So we got the house, we moved up here, and basically, Owain, as much as I love him, never had any intention of being in the Northwest. He needed the job that gave him the audience so he could get on to the next step. So I kind of knew that it would always become more and more. And then I obviously got the job. So I now do Monday, Tuesday, what day is it? Wednesday? Thursday, Friday. I've got a 2-year-old who only just started sleeping about 3 days ago. And near on 6-year-old, I do a half day on a Tuesday. So if you do watch North West Tonight, I'm always pre-recorded on a Tuesday because I can't find anyone that wants to take my kids swimming lessons in Romley. And if you are at Romley on a Tuesday, I walk in TV ready, I look ridiculous, and then I get in the pool and teach Nell how to swim, and everyone's staring at me with this hair and makeup. TV's great, broadcasting is great. We, as weather presenters, are always at the end of the programme because you've no idea how long you're going to get until 1 minute before. Roger talks like there is no tomorrow. Richard on sport, or if Ian is on sport, you know you're screwed. So I will start off, there's only one person in my ear talking to, there's about 6 people in your ear. So as I'm speaking, I can hear usually Barney, who's the director, a sound, a lighting guy, Donna work mum, 3 other people talking about what they're going to have for tea that night. So there's usually about 6 or 7 people in your ear, but there's one specific person who's telling me how long I've got, and then they'll count me down backwards as someone else is counting backwards out of the programme. And they'll tell me 1 minute before I go on. So it can't be scripted as a weather presenter because you can't write to time because you've no idea. You should get 2 minutes. The longest I've had is 3 minutes 40. The least Diane had was 2 seconds. She literally went on and went, and your weather forecast will be nice. That's it. The worst one I ever did was on my very first broadcast in Yorkshire was to try to say it would be good weather for a bank holiday, but I got all of that a little bit jumbled up. People like it when you mess up, so as long as you do it with good grace. So you can't read a script because you don't know how long you've got. I've only ever done it with a ball once because my clicker didn't work. And now we're in this random temporary studio, which is like a tiny little shoebox, because if you watch network news, the lunchtime or the 6 or the 10, they've got all these lovely new shiny studios. So that's what each region is getting. And we are one of them, the last ones to get it. So we're out of our studio for 8 weeks while that is being built. Speaking of which, I was going to forget this, but I did ring Roger before and make him do me a video, which of course I can't play to you, but I can play the audio and I can send it. So bear with me while I just load this up. Roger, by the way, is exactly who he is on TV. He is what he is. And he'll kill me with this. He won't drink in public. He'll have one, but he won't get drunk in public because he's too scared of what he might do. Except he did go out a few weeks ago and he came in on the Monday and he's like this at the desk. Oh God. And I was like, what is wrong? And he went, I've done something terrible. And he'd gone to cricket and he'd been on the Sunday breakfast. And when you do breakfast, you do feel jet lag. And one drink goes to your head. And then obviously he'd gone out and he was like being poured drinks down his neck. And he fell on the tram. And I've never seen him so... And I was like, people will love you if they see Roger pissed on a tram. Anyway, you'll never see Roger pissed on a tram again. So here he is, 1 second. And I will send it you. 1 sec.
Inside our little temporary broom cupboard that we've moved into this week, just to say hello and to wish you a very enjoyable evening. I understand it's your 11th anniversary, so many congratulations on reaching that milestone. And thank you for what you've done to raise money to support Kay.
I mean, you haven't yet,
charitable work. I'm sure she'll have some interesting anecdotes to tell you. If she says anything about me, take it with a pinch of salt. She's probably lying. But I hope you have a great time. Have a lovely evening, and all the best to all of you.
Rog, he's at work, fuming. So I should tell you about Cradle. So I got involved with Cradle. We lost our first baby, Reg. We'd been at a wedding. We'd not been together long, if you remember the rom-com. And he'd come home for 2 weeks to look after his granddad. And we ended up at a friend of his daughter's wedding. And back to I tell you too much. That morning, I felt bad, really bad. And I thought, I need to go to the supermarket. And I went into that supermarket on the way to Wembley because I'd said to Radio York, where I was the breakfast presenter, I'll cover the match of York City. Let's not forget that I did have this career in football. But I was doing it to impress Jim. I've not known him for very long. I was like, just covering a football match, you might want to come along. And he was like, oh, right. He's not really that hard. And we were very hungover, and he hated me for then dragging him across London to go to Wembley. We get to Winnersh Services. I said, wait in the car, I'll be back in a minute. And I went into Sainsbury's and got a pregnancy test and Tampax, because one of them was going to work and one did. And I was like, oh my God. He was flying back to America the next day. I'd only known him for 16 weeks. I rang work, said the car had broken down on the motorway, burst into tears and said I couldn't possibly come and cover a football match. And we drove all the way back to Manchester. By the time we got to Mum and Dad's house, this was the best thing that's ever happened, and we were pregnant and I was moving to America, and Mum and Dad were like, what? As I'm flinging wee sticks at them, my dad's horrified. Sadly, we lost that baby. But while at the wedding that we were at, we were joking the day before we found out what we would call a baby if we had a baby, and we said we'd call it Reg, which is why Reg is called Reg. We don't know if Reg was a boy or a girl, but in my head, Reg was a boy. So I was heartbroken, and I remember I was at Stepping Hill, and my mum and my sister were with me. Jim was in America, and the sonographer took ages. I'd been bleeding and I'd gone in and she'd taken ages, and then she basically just turned the light on and said, oh, there's no heartbeat, you'll have to go upstairs. And I just, you know when you can't actually fathom what? And it really struck me that she's probably seen maybe, I don't know, in a day, 5, 10, 15 women. And, you know, she may have said the same thing a few times, but it was my first baby, and she'd literally just ripped my heart out, and she just turned the light on. And I couldn't believe that someone who was in that position had the empathy of a dead toad. And I was pretty shaken, and I'd rung my boss, and he said, take 2 weeks off. So I did, and we drove and drank gin in random places. And then I came back and he said, oh, what do you want to tell your listeners? And I was like, oh, right. Well, what do you mean? And he said, well, what are you going to say? Where are you going to say, where have you been on holiday? And I went, I'm not going to say I've been on holiday. It was the worst holiday of my life. I'm just going to tell them the truth. And at the time, Radio York Breakfast Show, the audience average age was between 60 and 80. And it was like, I just don't know how that's going to go. And I was like, I can't work for you if you're going to make me sit and lie. So I just went on air and explained what happened, burst into tears, and then did a 4-hour best radio show I've ever done with people who were in their 80s and who'd never been able to talk about the babies that they'd lost, miscarried, given stillborn. And I thought, oh, the conversation needs to carry on, because people don't talk about it. And people in work, one woman who was a really good mate of mine, pulled me into a side room to tell me that she'd had 7 miscarriages. And it really annoyed me, which is on me, not her, that she was telling me in the quiet, dark room and not saying, I've had 7 kids, it's just, they're not here. And some people don't like to talk about it, but I've got 2 children living, and I've got 2 children that died, and that's all right for me to say. And I'm quite happy making you feel uncomfortable about it. So if you don't like to hear the fact that I hemorrhaged and bled and one of the babies came out on the floor, then it doesn't bother me if you feel uncomfortable, because it's just it's normal, and it happens to 1 in 4, actually near on 1 in 3. So I'll always talk about it. And I will always do what I can to help those that are going through it, quietly or publicly. And it just so happens that I've got a bigger voice, and I'm happy to talk about it. So I ended up making a radio documentary, which is on BBC Sounds, and it'll always be on BBC Sounds, so I'll send it. It's called The Emptiness Within, because to me, I felt empty when I lost Reg. And it's an hour-long documentary, and I interviewed Jim on it, because there's men are often overlooked, in my opinion, and just because they're not carrying and they don't have the same hormonal drop, the pregnancy to me is in your head. If the doctor could have taken away my thoughts, it would have been a much easier process. So it's now on documentary, and because of that documentary, a girl called Louise got in touch with me, and Louise is our founder. Louise had an ectopic pregnancy and nearly died. And in hospital, they sent her husband home to get her some bits and pieces to make her feel more comfortable, and she just never ever wanted anyone to be left by their partner, husband, wife. So she decided to gift the hospital in Liverpool 10 comfort bags to give any women that came in a similar situation to her. And in the comfort bag were things like hairbrush, lip balm, shower gel, hair bobble, hand sanitizer, and I think she put it out on Twitter, this is years ago, and the response was overwhelming, and it's gone from her wanting to donate 10 bags to us now. We work with 50 hospitals in the UK. We would love to work for more, but we need ambassadors to get on board. And I'm an ambassador. So I basically supply comfort bags to the Northwest, mainly to Bolton, Wythenshawe, Stepping Hill. My basement, much to Jim's delight, is like a Boots hall. It's incredible. We're always begging for toiletries, because if we can make people feel just a little bit more comfortable, we will do. In lockdown, I set up Connected, because I thought during lockdown we had another miscarriage. So we had Reg, now we've got Ava, who's nearly 6, then we lost Star, and we've got Nell, who's 2.5. And in lockdown, obviously I had to go through all the medical procedures alone, and I thought, God, I think I am quite sane, but it wouldn't take a lot to send you over the edge in things like this, especially when you are on your own and you're completely on your own. So I set up Connected, which is an online once-a-week support group for just peer support, to just get on Zoom and cry if you want to cry, and laugh if you want to laugh. And we now do that funded with, it's counsellor-led. So instead of offering one-to-ones, we offer a group counselling session, and it's fully booked every week. So there is support, because the thing with pregnancy loss is there's quite a lot for those who deliver full-term, stillborn, but pre-23 weeks and 6 days, there's not too much, there's not a lot of tactical support. So our comfort bags are a way to say we're here, and in there is a card with our details on. So if you do get a sonographer who says there's no heartbeat, off you go. You've at least got a card of someone who gets it and wants to help you. So that's Cradle. And all I would say is, if you are in the supermarket and you can afford to buy a bar of soap or a tube of toothpaste, please do, and then let me know and I'll come and pick it up, because I supply hundreds of these every year, and we look to people to donate toiletries in order to keep it going. Told you I like to talk, didn't I? Anything else? That's me. Thanks for listening to me waffle. And do let me know if I can tell anyone any more about Cradle. And I have left some cards. The main thing Louise wrote was the letter that she wrote to herself when she was in a hospital bed. She's amended it slightly, but it's the Dear Friend letter, and every bag has one of those. And if you do know someone who has lost a baby, even at any age, I've spoken to many people who are 70s, 80s, 90s, who just want to talk because they've never spoke before. Please do give them my details. We're losing people at a rate of numbers. Embarrassing. Anyway, oh yeah, questions? I'm only having one because I'm driving. Don't tell Mum.
How do you know what the weather's going to be like?
Still make it up, which is brilliant. So when I get into work, currently for North West Tonight, I do North West Tonight programme. I do the 10:25. I do Radio Manchester, Radio Merseyside, and Radio Lancashire. So we cover from South Cumbria down to Chester and the Isle of Man. Although someone on breakfast on Monday called it the Isle of Wight, and I have never read so many complaints. You've no idea how angry people are on the Isle of Man, and she said it 3 times. So when I come into work, we log into something called Meteor Guard. When I log into there, I see a real time of what's happening now, and then we get what's called 6-ups and 9-ups, and they are snapshot images 3 hours apart where I look at the map of the UK and look at isobars, look at fronts, and I forecast from maps. So I collate probably about 30 pieces of data from wind speeds, temperatures, gusts, synoptic charts, and work out what an occluded front, at what time that might arrive for us and what that might look like. So I could go into a lot more science, but I mean, we are in the northwest. We're not technically on paper the wettest place in the UK, which is interesting. That's in Wales. But we're up there, and we're in a unique position where we've got the Irish Sea and the Cheshire Gap. So if we're in a certain airflow, we will get more showers coming inland. If that's a northerly, we'll get more snow coming inland. Snow's a nightmare to forecast because you need to have a certain setup. Has to be the right air mass, right wind speed, right overnight temperatures. You are more likely to get snow at Easter than you are at winter, because at Christmas you just assume you're going to get the wintry postcard, the beautiful scene with the snow and the church, but the sea isn't cold enough. Whereas we've gone through winter now, the sea and the land is cold. So when you get a northerly, which by the way is coming on Friday, Saturday, the precipitation is more likely to be wintry, which is why it is, if you've got an early Easter, more likely to snow at Easter than it is at winter.
Can you tell me what it's going to be like in the lakes next week?
Dry for 25 degrees. Take my number, I'll give you a personal. Any other weather-related questions?
What is the difference between showers and rain?
Oh, I love that question. When I was in Leeds, I had an office, which was amazing. It doesn't happen now. And I came out the office, and I could hear a journalist on the phone arguing with someone, and then I heard weather. I went, what? Give me the phone. So he gave me the phone, and this guy said, sorry, who's that? I was like, it's Kay. And he went, oh, right. Well, I didn't think you'd answer. And I was like, well, you shouldn't have rung then, should you? I said, what's your problem? He said, well, I'm quite cross actually, as it happens. And I said, right. He said, well, on breakfast this morning you said that there would be snow. And I said, think you'll find I said wintry showers. And he said, yeah, well, it's not snowing. And I went, right. He said, well, my brother lives 3 miles away. It's snowing. I went, right. Sorry, what is your point? And he went, well, you said. I said, careful what you're saying here. He said, you said there'd be wintry showers. Tell me what you think a shower is. He went, well, might be wet. I said, yeah, it might be, or it might be dry. I went, yeah, that's a shower. It's not a frontal band. And he went, right. See you then. I went, right, bye. It's all a bit awkward. So a shower, people want a postcode, but if you're in a northwesterly air mass, then the air and the wind is coming from the northwest, it's coming straight through the Irish Sea. We are exposed there, right through the sticky out bit of Merseyside. The showers will come in, but they're not a main band of rain. A frontal band is rain that will rain for everyone and scoot away. Showers, it will be showering, and you'll look over there and you'll see sunshine and blue showers, blue sky. So it all depends if they're coming through. On a cold front, you're more likely to get rain, clear off, cold behind it. A warm front, it'll cloud over, be miserable, damp, slow to clear. It just depends on what the front is. But a shower, quite literally, is like what's coming over your head, and your husband, wife will be next door dry. But you can't postcode that. I wish you could. Any more? I feel like I'm at school now.
Do you have any plans, long-term plans, career-wise?
To dominate. I might go back into acting. No, so I get bored quite easily, as you may well have gathered. I've moved 11 times with work. And be very careful what you wish for. Like I said, when you tell the universe, things happen. So I told the universe about 3 weeks ago I was bored. And then my boss came in. Actually, it's not true. In December, I stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom and I said to the mirror, I love Rick the Butcher. Do you know what Wax? Love Rick the Butcher. And I was like, oh my God, I love him. And I was like, God, I love Jamie at the Fishmongers. I love him. I was like, I love Sue, and I even love the angry one at the greengrocers. I love them. And I was like, I love the girls at the hair. Oh my God, I love Marple. I was like, I truly love Marple. So then I went into work and I said to my boss, I truly love Marple. And he was like, yeah, we all know. Can you stop promoting Muse? Because I'm getting sick of it. And I was like, I love Muse. And he was like, yeah, we all know. So I was like, I know, but what I'm saying is I do love. And he went, oh dear God, I know you love Marple. And I went, yeah, but I love my town. I do love it. And he was like, well done. I said, yeah, but what I'm saying is other people in the North West will love where they live. I'm not naive. I'm sure there's plenty of people who hate where they live. But I like to look on the positive. There'll be people who love where they live. So I think I should do a film about how top Marple is. Then I'll go around the North West and do films about how top other places are. And he went, oh, actually, will you do the Isle of Man? I said, yeah. He said, fine. So now, every other week, one's on this Friday, I went to Morecambe, which I spent a lot of time growing up as a child, and I got in the sea. I do cold water swimming, so I go to, oh my God, what's it called? Coombs. We go to Coombs. I should be there at 6 o'clock in the morning, but my friend's just cancelled. So we go, I do a lot of cold water swimming, and the guy who set up the open water swimming club in Morecambe got in touch to say I should go there. So we went there, but because of the bloody tide, I had to do the filming of the sea first, and then get out and do the filming for the rest of the day. So I was freezing. So that's out on Friday, because I was bored and I wanted to do more. The weather's amazing, but I need to do more. So anyway, then I told the universe I was bored, and then I told my boss to his face I was bored. And there's some radio presenters that I listen to, and I just think, I can't stand it when radio presenters put on a radio voice. So I'll be talking to a presenter off air, because I do weather for them, and then they'll put, hello there, good evening. And I'm like, sorry, what? That is not your voice that you've been talking to me, and it really bothers me. So I told my boss that I'm sick of hearing all these rubbish radio presenters, put me back on radio. And he went, leave it with me. Anyway, a week goes by, I've got some fantastic news. I was like, oh, get my own radio show. The dream would be to do, I love Mike Sweeney, but he's 76. So step down, 10 till 2, and then I'd do weather. But he ain't going anywhere. I thought he was going to say that, but instead he said, I've got you a Mojo kit. Now, a Mojo kit is how I first started in Northern Ireland, which is your own camera to go and self-shoot, which nobody wants. Like, what? He said, think about it. You can just nip off and do a story. I was like, oh, God. Right, great. So now I've got a Mojo kit. And then the next day he said, more fantastic news. So I said, oh, right, okay. And he said, I'm going to get Roger to train you up on the lates. I said, what? So Roger's been trying to get out of doing the 10:25 news for about 2 decades. And now he's trying to get me to train up on the 10:25 news. And I was like, all right, yeah. So I'll be sat there doing the news, which I used to do. So that doesn't bother me. But then what I'm going to say, oh look, now here it's me with the weather. And then I'll go and do the weather. I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. He went, oh, yeah, it's not going to work. No, and he went, you could do it 1 day a week though. But then who's having the kids? So Jim works away a lot. I have a nightmare with, I love Ros, the mum. They're still in Bramall, the wrong side of. So kids, no, nurseries close at 6. No one seems to want children till 11:30 at night. So it's near on impossible. So hopefully that's not going to happen in the near future. So in answer to your question, I don't really know, but I've told the universe I want a radio show again. So that would do. I've half written a book, but again, I don't seem to have any time for that. And I'm always like, I want to do something else, but I need a clone, is what I need. But within the BBC, I'm at the top of my game for weather. So I wouldn't go anywhere else for weather, and I wouldn't really want to leave the BBC. So they're going to have to give me a radio show at some point. The 1 o'clock news is moving to Manchester, so that will come from Media City in May. So I'm already earmarking the director of that, because what happens if someone's sick and I'll be in the building, so maybe I could do network from there. Otherwise you're only doing network weather from London. Even Carol's never going to come up to Salford. They do on occasion anniversaries, but the weather, while the breakfast show is from Media City, weather is always out of London. But again, I would argue that they should have it live. But if I do that, then I'm going to have to get up again at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't want to have Botox. So, can't do that either. So who knows?
There you go.
Okay? Anybody? Any more? For any more?
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
the screen that you
Yeah.
put all this at, is it new technology? Is the actual map in front of you? Or
It will be. So, and it is technically at the minute, it's just back to front. So I started out with nothing. So it just used to be green. And on my first broadcast, I was talking about like Yorkshire, and then my director was saying, "Well, I mean, you're actually pointing to Glasgow." And I was like, so that you learn where. Now what I see is a reverse of what you see. I don't ignore it. There's some, in fact I was telling you, wasn't there? There's some statistics as well, and I don't know the actual, I don't do well with detail, which is unfortunate in weather, but you do always need to sit on the fence in weather. There's a statistic about when you watch the weather, there are 3 people. One will only listen to what I say. You will do all 3, but you will focus on one of these. Watch what I'm wearing, listen to what I say, or watch the graphics. So you'll absorb the weather, but your primary will be one of those 3 things. So every single weather forecast, when I leave work, my mum will ring and dissect what I've worn to the 9th degree. And then I'll hear my dad going, "What's the weather tomorrow?" Mum went, "I don't know, we'll look on the app." And I'm like, "You're kidding me." The BBC weather app is the worst app. Do not use the BBC weather app. As soon as it's released, it's out of date. It can't keep up. Or you'll just, like that guy on the phone who was moaning about the showers, you'll only look at the graphics and you'll see rain over where you think your house is. And if that doesn't happen, you'll be furious. And I've got it wrong. Well, that's a shower. And a graphic weather is only a best guess. It's not fact. And 4 out of 5 days were correct. So 80% of the time the BBC gets it spot on, within the realm of weather not being fact. But the actual graphics, I mean, I've done weather in summer last year, and there was snow on my graphics. Now there'll be some people who watched that and will genuinely have questions about the snow coming. So you have to explain, this is obviously an error. Please God, don't think it's going to snow in June.
It did snow in June once.
Well, it did once, yeah, but not last year. It definitely didn't.
No.
The graphics are a bugbear. The technology is pretty rubbish. What we actually see is pretty spot on, but what that's portrayed on the graphics is an idea, an indication.
Do you work with somebody to do the graphics?
So we are all regionally sat on our own. So I sit next to Roger, but I've got 3 weather map station computers, and I sit and forecast for an hour, and then I join a conference with the north of the UK with the chief Met Officer for that day, and they will run through the synoptic charts and what the forecast is for the UK, and that's a chance for you to ask if there's anything that's not making sense for your region. And then from that, I will sort my graphics out, and there's a weather graphics director in London who, if needed, everything you see on the programme I have messed with to a degree. I can't mess with the physical rainfall, but anything additional, wording, pictures, ice on a ball, all of the fiddly bits I mess with, or if they're not right, then London has to get involved. But you are physically on your own. You're part of a team, they're just scattered around the UK.
Would you do Strictly Come Dancing?
God, no. I can't dance. What have I done like that? I used to do, obviously I wasn't in it, but in Yorkshire I used to host Brass Factor, which did get quite big, to be fair. It was a brass band competition. So me and, what's that guy, Corbett, he had Sooty and Sweet.
Harry.
Me and him were the hosts, the judges. So it was brass bands because, of course, I used to be in a brass band and decided I wanted to be a musician. Because I wanted a saxophone, so Mum said I had to start at cornet, and then I had to go to a clarinet, and then I was allowed a sax. But in between the clarinet and the sax, teenage years and boys happened, so I gave it up. But I had this brass, they somehow cottoned on to this background of brass, so I got hooked into doing that, which I did really enjoy, but that was a host, I was not on it. Don't know if I could, no. People are mean, people are really, the problem is, I'm in your living room or lounge or kitchen every day, and so there are quite a few people who think that means that we're best mates and that they can email you and tell you exactly what they think of you, which is quite hurtful. Who emailed me the other day? She was, oh, do you know what? This lady emailed me. She doesn't, no one thinks they're emailing me, but I see all the emails. So once a week, I'll go into the North West Tonight email, search my name or weather, and I'll reply, because people will ask weather questions and things. And this one woman emailed me on International Women's Day to say, can somebody tell Kay Crewdson that she speaks too loud? I do not need to hear someone shouting in my living room. I don't have to turn the volume down for anyone else, only her, and it is not acceptable. I was like, and you've really got to let it go. And I was like, no, just let it go. No. So passive aggressively said something along the lines of, well, I'm very sorry to hear that I'm so loud. 20 years I've been doing this now, no one's ever said that I'm loud. I know that I talk too much, but loud hasn't been a thing. I'd love to go on tonight and whisper, but I do think that's going to look stranger than me shouting. Perhaps I'm just too loud for you. Anyway, she came grovelling back, absolutely devastated that I'd read the email, said it was a hearing aid, and that she'd had the volume setting wrong. I was like, but people will say anything. I've had all sorts. I've had the most bizarre stalking. I've had a security guard when I used to be on a breakfast show because someone was waiting for me outside. When I put the film out about I Love Marple, I had a guy send me an email to say that he was waiting for me and would be waiting on Sunday at 12 noon to take me to the Roman Lakes, and obviously in my head where he's going to kill me, where he will take me on a romantic day and read me poems. I know where you live and I'll see you there. And I was like, oh my God. But obviously, I thought about going, no I didn't. But people do just think that, and that's nice because we are a family at work and we are aware that we are in your lives. But there's a line that some people do cross, and quite a lot of it is negative. So when I had that really bad IBS, I'd get a lot of emails asking if I was pregnant because I'd be swollen. And people don't think you're bothered about it, and it's mean. What my very first boss said to me, if anyone sends you a mail and it's block capital, do not open it, it won't be pleasant. Anyway, I couldn't resist. I'd done a breakfast show shift, and I was walking out, and work mum in Leeds was like, oh, wait. Used to get loads of fan mail back then, like bags of it, and she was like, here's your bag. And she went, don't look at the top one. In fact, give it me. And I went, no, I'm opening it. And I opened it, and it said, can someone tell that tranny Crewdson she needs to go back to the other side where she belongs? She looks like shit. And I was like, And she was like, I told you not to read it. But you've got to just take it all with a pinch of salt. But people can be lovely, but equally there are some people that like to overshare with their opinion. And you can't please all the people all the time. I'm sure I've annoyed some of you tonight. I do apologise. Any more?
One more.
Go on.
Do you get many photographs sent in, and who chooses the ones that go on?
Me? No, again, there's one guy called. So, if you don't know, we have Weather Watcher pictures. You can just email nwt@bbc.co.uk, or you can become a Weather Watcher, which simply means you've got your own profile and you can easily upload photographs. I don't get sent enough photographs. There are about 3 people who do it every single day. Jean's Jules, Good Walker Me, and Norm. Anyway, I was so fed up of these pictures because I have... The point of Weather Watchers is to ideally tell a story. So it's nice if it's been raining in the morning and there's a good rainy picture, and it's sunny in the afternoon and there's a good sunny picture, then I'll do that. But believe me, out of about 300 pictures I get, there's few that are they need to be in landscape. You need to see the weather. It's like, that is the point. It's like, I know that daffodil is beautiful, but it's not a flower programme, it's the weather. And it's hard. So then I got really annoyed by it, so I was like, I'll do a film with one of the most annoying ones and tell people why you should become a weather watcher. So bloody met Barry, Good Walker Me, at Lyme Park. Mother of God. He sent me a really angry email the other day. Kay, I am furious. I sent in 8 pictures yesterday, not one was used. I see that Jean has sent in 12, and the picture I saw that you put on, or someone put on, had a dog on it. And I was like, number 1, I pick all the pictures, mate. Number 2, if there's an animal on there that's cute, mix it up, I'll put an animal on, as long as you can see the weather. Number 3, it's not the Barry show. So we had an aggressive, passive-aggressive bounce back till I finally put another one on, and now he's my best mate again. But if you could become a weather watcher and just send me a picture, it would help me out. Painful. Or if you have any story ideas, now I've got my own camera. Apparently I can come out and film whenever I want. But story ideas, anything that's happening, or you've heard about, then do share. Because I'm forever trying to get different stories on. I met this woman, where did I go? Glossop. I was in Old Glossop doing a piece to camera, and this woman came out and she said, "Darling, I have to ask, otherwise I'll simply die." "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Dear God, don't die." I was like, "I'm just doing this film because I look like this guy loves Glossop, so this is what we're doing." And she said, "Oh." So she told me on camera why she loved Glossop, and then after I filmed her, she said, "Darling, tell me this. Do you cave?" I was like, "What? Do you cave, darling?" And I was like, "As in get in a cave?" And she was like, "Yes, darling, caving." And I was like, "I can't say I don't know." And she went, "Darling, you simply must." And I went, "Let's ask you, how old are you?" And she went, 75, darling. I started caving at 70 and it's absolutely changed my life." I was like, okay. So now I'm going to go and cave with her in the summer. A 75-year-old granny who's caving in Glossop. Stories like that, I'm all about. So if you are doing anything a little bit wacky and out there, please tell me. Any more for any more?
Did Owain have his drum kit in your shared house?
He did not.
Okay.
We had, as we were leaving work one day, Paul Hudson is the main weather presenter in Yorkshire. He's been there for 1,200 years. And it had new headshots. And as we were driving out the car park, I used to have this tiny little 2-seater soft top car. And Paul Hudson's 6-foot framed face was in the bin. So we were like, "Oh, get Paul." So we put Paul in the back of the car and then we drove home, and our weather house was Paul on the wall, Me and Keely upstairs and a wine downstairs. It was brilliant. He did not have his drum kit there though. I did his first dance with him at his wedding, much to the delight of his husband. A wine is, now he's gone, back to Wales. He went back to Wales mainly because his family's there and one of the parents weren't very well. But he, and I'll say this to his face, he is he's someone that needs you on the way up. So he's come back once to North West tonight, and do you know what he did? I know I'm being a little bit snidey, but I'll tell you too much. He went up the back stairs and didn't go through the office, so he never said or spoke to anyone. And they made me interview him on telly about his new gig at Radio 2. And I said to him, do you know what I wanted to do? I wanted to put his name on the weather ball. So I was going to put his name on, and then I was going to walk on and be like, and you can get off, like, you're gone now, get out of it. And he said, I'm just going to have to ring my agent about that. And I went, what? I went, are you being a dick? And he went, sorry babes, it's just what I've got to do. So he'll be back, he's on the high road at the minute. So I haven't heard from him, and this is the guy who I danced at his wedding. So I've not heard from him for a while, but no one has, and he's busy, he's in demand, and he has done very well for himself. But thankfully there was no drum kit in the house on an early shift. There was just a lot of wine. Any more? I'll send Roger's video to you so you can all see it, and I will send the link to my radio documentary if you know anybody that has been affected by babe loss and think they might benefit from hearing from it. And if you do know anyone, please do pass my details on, because I also do one-to-one phone calls, so happy to talk to anyone, whatever. And thank you for having me. I'm sorry I've talked too much.